Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me. It was a pleasure and an honor, and I learned so much. I'm sure everyone did. I have to say, knowing Alan for a long time, I knew it would be fantastic, but I have to say that you exceeded the wildest expectations. You hit it out of the park. I just think everyone should give the organizers a round of applause. My role today is to give a bit of a sort of a summary, some observations of the day's proceedings. And I mean, there's so much where to start, and I know it's always challenging being the last presenter of the day, but for me, there was a number of key, key aspects of this project and what we learned today. So the first, and for me anyway, and is collaboration, the focus on collaboration. And I mean, we know is important as a person with a disability, as people here with who may have disabilities, or just people who have achieved things or want to achieve things in their lives. Collaboration is essential, right? This sense that, oh, well, we want to be independent. Well, in a sense, but we know that we can achieve much more when we collaborate and when we listen to the different perspectives and voices. That brings the richness to our communities, large and small. So, but the other thing about collaboration, I think, that it really rang true to me during the course of the day is for people with disabilities, we, and this was discussed in the hub on transition, right? We interact with so many levels of government, so many parts of civil society, whether it's, government supports at different times in our lives, whether it's, the public education, the elementary school and high school, and then university, each one needs to be better aligned and connected, because sometimes it feels like we access this service and then we get, it may be good service, but then we get dumped on the street and have to go to the next store, and the pieces don't seem to connect. But the other aspect of collaboration, I think, is it really is focused on the individual, focused on the communities, focused on people with disabilities. So that's the point about universal design, right? Human-based design. It's not building something and then trying to fit people with their unique characteristics into that space, but it's building the space, understanding the needs and experiences of the diverse range of of who we are as people. Right. So the collaboration is key. And we heard that from, well, everyone, right? We heard that from Perrin Beatty. We heard that from B of the Canadian Labour Congress. We heard it in the hubs, how all the different pieces need to come together. So the next, for me, dimension of what we're talking about today is the innovation and the focus. What I think is really super interesting and critical that the IDEA Innovation Hub, Social Innovation Hub brings is the range of expertise and subject area experts and to develop evidence-based solutions. And I think that is also critical. I know, as a person with a disability myself, and many of you may know, like we get through life. We do. I mean, you know, I have some privileges that maybe others didn't. But, you know, ultimately people, you know, we get through life. We figure it out. It's not always easy, but we figure it out. And what do? Well, we talk to one another and we say, oh, yeah, this was a tool that I used. It's really good. Or, hey, this was a tool that I used. Or an employer says, speaks to, you know, goes to one conference and hears, oh, well, you can do it this way. That, oh, yeah, let's do that. And it's sort of what's sometimes called anecdata, right? It's kind of like data, but it's not really evidence-based. It's not comprehensive. It draws from, you know, either a narrow set of circumstances or knowledge. It either takes lived experience as the solution or has a hard time integrating lived experience as part of the knowledge, collection of knowledge and innovation. So I think the IDEA project is just so important in the approach, because again, there are many organizations doing fantastic work. You heard from the ministers, Minister Qualtrough and Fortier. The government is doing, you know, has all these initiatives that are being launched but there are gaps, and you know, there are gaps. I know for myself, as I started working within the federal sector, you know, I have an experience. When I started, I had to get a security clearance. So they sent me the form and I opened it up. And well, I use a screen reader, it wasn't accessible. So I sent it back and I said, could you send me an accessible format? So they said, sure. And then a few weeks later, I got the email back with the same form saying, oh, we checked with Treasury Board and they say it's accessible. Well, what am I supposed to do with that? Well, I tell you what I did with that. I asked my wife to fill it out for me. You know, so there are gaps, right? And I think this, again, the IDEA project that we heard about today is also looking at where are those gaps and how do we fill them? How do we connect pieces so that they work better together? Third thing that I think was really important, which we all knew, but you know, it really is important to you know, remind ourselves that diversity, is that disability is so diverse. It's the nature of disabilities, different kinds of disabilities, whether sensory, mobility, cognitive, intellectual, you know, environmental sensitivities, learning disabilities, right? The experience, not only lived experience, but the experience of people with disability. You know, myself, I am blind, but when it was I have RP, which is a degenerative eye condition. So when I was young and even through school, I could read normal print. So there are changes, you know, that's my experience as opposed to, you know, colleagues I know that were born blind. We heard about injured workers today and their experience, not only becoming disabled, but their experience with the healthcare system and what how the healthcare system sees them and sees the solution to their problems. Right. So there's such a diversity. And then, of course, we haven't started, well, we did start to talk about the diversity in the sense of intersectionality, economic and ethnic and racial diversity, LGBTQ and gender, and how those impact and intersect with, right? And of course, intersectionality is not, oh, well, you layer one, as you have more identities of peoples who have been traditionally disadvantaged, it becomes much more harder. The experience actually intersects and so it makes the solutions, as we heard, they need to be targeted, right? So the other thing I think we heard today, which for me was, also great, but maybe the best, which is a freshness and an energy, not only from the idea folks, but around the rooms in the workshops that I attended, a freshness and a willingness to do things differently. I was a labor lawyer for about 18 years and practiced litigator and, practiced and did a lot of duty to accommodate cases in my time. And I remember when I started, which is about 30 years ago, the principle was an employer is not required to cobble together a job, right? So you have a person with disability, often was either an injured worker or somebody who experienced a disability through accident or illness. They want to come back to work. They can't do their old job, take duty to accommodate. And it was usually, well, let's modify the job. And well, they can't do all of that. But the rule was you can't cobble together a job for a person. Well, I don't know what human resources is now, but that's what we do now, right? In the new economy, we cobble together work. We say, okay, well, either through gig work or working from home or just innovative ways of doing work with technology to assist. And what I heard from, Perrin Beatty and others was, we are willing to do things differently because it's the right thing to do and it makes business sense. So I think that just that opens up a whole space of opportunity. No, it's not going to be easy and there's still stigma. I mean, nothing about this, the journey towards accessibility, is linear, right? And it's not even 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's all mixed up back and forth, and people are trailing and other people are ahead, and then a pandemic hits, and then climate change is something we need to deal with. And so none of it is linear, but I get a sense that there is energy and people are identifying spaces of innovation. Now, the last thing I'll say is, everyone liked Mike Bradley, right? I'd never seen him speak before. He's great. But, one of the things he said that really resonated with me, and I tell you, I've worked within the federal public sector for the last year, so this really resonates with me. He talked about municipalities. It's the local level. It's easier to get things done. And that is true. I tell you, my first work, I'll close with this. My first work experience as a lawyer, as a litigator, was, was at the job. The employer gave me a computer with, Zoom text I was using at the time, a CCTV, a video magnifier, even arranged the office furniture to, fit in with my equipment. Work was distributed so that, I wouldn't go to places that you'd have to drive. I did other cases where it was in cities or you could fly to, or those sorts of things. And it was like seamless. It was easy. Now you're asking, oh, who was that employer? Well, it was me. Me and my two other partners. But it was seamless. And it didn't cost a lot of money. I can tell you it didn't. I was managing partner of the law firm. It didn't cost a lot of money. And so I think this notion of it can get done. It can get done. We just have to, not that everything is easy, but, we have to cut through what I call the culture of, for every solution, there's a problem. And we do face that. But I hope with the work that IDEA is doing, with the enthusiasm that I see in this room, with the apparent willingness of government and business to really think strategically and creatively and in an innovative way, we can make real progress. Thank you very much.